Okay, everyone. It is April 1st, 2020. Although I don't believe that anybody really is in an April Fool's mood. And to my knowledge, nobody tried to play any April Fool's jokes on me today. And I did not try to pull any on anybody else today. Although I did talk to my father earlier, and I was thinking about saying something like, hey, Dad, wanted to tell you I'm getting married, or something. And then tell them April Fools, but I didn't even do that. Once again, it's just hard to get uh, in that mood with everything going on. What's going on here? Who's in here already? Let's see. Angela was first, then Concha, and then Laura, Jasmine, Heather, Christine. Cherie is going back to old school Cherie instead of CB. She's going back to Cherie. I think you need to maybe tell me why you've chosen to go back. A little bit. It's been a while, a little bit. I don't know if I've seen you. It's been a while. I was going to say a little bit. Where you been? Good to see you. Valerie, Indy. Indy says, hello, everyone. Tried to tune in at 9 last night. Too soon. Yes. Well, in your defense, Indy, with everything that's been going on, these days do seem to kind of run together, right? In fact, I posted on the Facebook page, my page yesterday or the day before, that it does seem like we are living our own version of Groundhog Day, being that we're not allowed to do much, we're not allowed to go very many places. So it does feel like, doing the same day over and over and over. I want to remind all of you to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, give this video the thumbs up if you could. If you can do that on the device that you're using to watch this show tonight. So subscribe and share and everything else. Hello, Michelle. I hope you're doing well tonight. I spent the day, it's kind of like I have like this fortress now. We can't go out. I can't go out. There's nowhere to go. I can't go play disc golf. Can't go to Starbucks. So I do kind of feel like in my own little fortress up here on the 8th floor. Um, not much has changed in my life, really. Although I know for some of you, you've had drastic changes, especially if you've had somebody in your life who's been affected by this virus. I know your life has been greatly affected, but even if that's not the case, you have kids home from school now, maybe you've lost your job or been laid off, or, so many people are going through such changes. And I really have to say that my particular life has not changed that much, maybe 10%. That's about it. Kathy, what's going on? Cherie, I took Heather's advice and stopped talking to crazies, so I'm back to being Cherie. What crazies were you talking to, Cherie? I think we'd all like to hear more about that. Leah, hello, Leah. Are you new, Leah? I don't recognize your name before, so good evening. Hello, Paula. Good to see you in here tonight. So I realize a lot of people are going through changes, a little bit of changes in my life, but I'm sure I'm well below the average of percentage change since this all started. Hello, Savannah. Where here in Florida, they've issued a shelter at home or whatever it's called declaration. I have to admit, it's kind of like what everybody's been doing anyway, isn't it? I'm sure I missed something in there at some point, but I've been sheltering at home for like 2 weeks now. So I'm sure there's some legal change there and everything. I don't know, but the Florida governor finally did that, and I don't know what more. additional changes that's going to bring. I just don't know. Eric, what's going on? Good to see you in here, Eric. Thanks for joining in. So I'm in here up here at Fortress Dental on the 8th floor and just riding everything out. I went to do some food shopping either Sunday or Monday, except for the paper products, Al. Not much of a difference at my local Publix. Jasmine. Jasmine says, my state just got the stay-at-home order. Okay, Jasmine, where are you, if you can say? Are you in Florida? Paula asks me, any luck getting your dad to stay home? Is he doing okay? Paula, I'll have you know that I talked to my dad this evening for about a half hour. He's doing fantastic. We talked about the possibility of him getting this virus. No, I don't know truthfully if he's behaving himself or not. I am the kind of son, I'm not going to badger him. He understands what's going on. His mind is perfectly clear. He's going to do what he's going to do, and I'm not here to control him. All right, I'm just not going to have those conversations with him. He's 83 years old. He can make decisions for himself, and that's just the way I am. He can make his own decisions about how long he wants to live and where he wants to live and what he wants to do. He knows what's going on out there. If he wants to take those risks, I don't know what to tell you. Jasmine, you're in Mississippi. Okay, thank you, Jasmine. Michelle, we had shelter at home and folks laughed. That explanation is shelter in place refers to exactly where you are. Okay. Yeah, strange times. There is that saying out there somewhere that may you live in interesting times, and we are certainly doing that. Maybe interesting isn't the best word. It's not that interesting. And for some people, it's perfectly tragic. But it certainly is unique. Let's move. So, just been doing the same stuff. I'm still getting work done. Assistants still doing what they're doing. And so as far as Unfound goes, not much has changed. Not much has changed. I've actually lost a couple pounds since this all started. I think I'm eating a little healthier, and I'm doing some working out right here in my place. Getting some practice of disc golf at night out on my landing right here on the other side of this computer outside. Been doing some practicing putting and everything. Trying to keep active. And so there you go. Angela says 6.5 earthquake here last night in Idaho. Angela, I saw that. I've only felt one earthquake in my life, and that would have been when I lived in Las Vegas. It was October 1999. I was living on the second floor in an apartment complex on East Tropicana in Las Vegas, East Tropicana in Mountain Vista. And I woke up at like 3 in the morning and the room was going like this. The blinds, which were horizontal blinds, were shifting back and forth. It wasn't that big of an earthquake. I think 3 something. But that's the only earthquake I've ever felt in my life. So, but it was weird. It was weird. So I hope I didn't have too much damage out there, Angela. I hope not. Don't know. Shree's reminding everybody to hit the thumbs up. Thank you. Laura says, hey guys. Hey Ed. Hello, Laura. Good to see you tonight. I want to talk about the website. Natasha, one of my assistants, and I have been working hard at that, trying to sort some things out. But I just want you to know that I think that the new website, once again, it's theunfoundpodcast.com, I think is coming along very well. Natasha is keeping it updated. It has to be one of the most frequently updated true crime websites out there. Has to be. Natasha is just a few hours after the episodes come out on Fridays. She is posting that episode up on YouTube with pictures, etc. She also then puts that on the website, which is really good. And she's doing a lot of different things there. So I just want to remind everybody to go check it out. Please leave your comments, suggestions if you really like it. Let us know either in the Unfound Podcast discussion group or send us an email at unfoundpodcast.com. And so I think it's really headed in the right direction. I do want to, though, say one other thing regarding the old address at unfoundpodcast.com. I'm telling you that if you're going to go there, maybe even for the first time, just use the unfoundpodcast.com. However, I will tell you that the old address, just unfound without the just Unfound Podcast, will work for some of you. The issue continues to be that address or something has some certificate issue that Natasha and I tried to figure out this weekend. In fact, we spent a lot of Saturday trying to figure it out. And we kind of figured it out, kind of didn't figure it out. But we can avoid all of that if you think about going to the website, just use the new address, theunfoundpodcast.com. All right? And that'll take you where you need to be. And thank you, Christine. That's all Natasha who's working on that. I know a little bit about websites, but I could not have done what she's been doing for a variety of reasons. Don't have the skills and experience, in addition the time. So I really appreciate the work that she's put into it so far, and with the Unfound Podcast channel. So. But I just want to let all of you know, if you go to the website and something about an SSL certificate or something like that pops up, you're going to the old site. You're going to unfoundpodcast.com. Just go to the new one, theunfoundpodcast.com, and it'll work perfectly for you. Loads up very quickly. And I just want to say one other thing. Not only does the website look good like on a regular computer, on a laptop, it looks fantastic on a phone. In fact, I would say it even looks better on the phone. I think it's so well put together that just using, and this is my phone right here. This is the phone that I use all for interviews and everything else. If you are accessing the website with your phone, I think you're going to find it very easy to read and understand and hit all the buttons and everything else. So, and that's what Natasha was really going for in the design, because so many people these days do access websites more from their phone than from their laptop or iPad or whatever else. Hello, Ann. How are you? Good to see you tonight. I hope you're doing well. Let's go move on. So that's the website. Very excited about that. I'm really pleased on how that went from something that I never talked about for about a year and a half to something now that I'm talking about all the time, and that certainly gives credit to Natasha for doing that. And I also need to give a shout out to Cherie, who gave me the recommendation that she definitely thought that way back in December that Natasha should be brought into the group. So Cherie, I need to give you a shout out as well. Let's move on to this. The Lush Ball poll, of course, last Friday. Hello, Susan. Last Friday, we covered the disappearance of Jay Lushball. I think it's a disappearance that lends itself to a lot of different interpretations. I'm going to say it again. This is one of those disappearances where it very well could be that Jay walked off by himself and there's no foul play at all. And you could go to the whole other side and say he was murdered by multiple people and they covered it up. Anything in between those two extremes, I think, is possible. Now, what did all of you decide? Majority of you, at least in the discussion group, said that you believe that Jay was murdered. You believe that there was something went on, he got murdered, and people covered it up. Now, you should know, if you haven't seen the poll yet, or you're not in the group, if you're not, you should be. that I gave a variety of different answers. I said that he was murdered and it was a cover up. That he, let me just make sure I get this right. Let me, let's take a look. I want to make sure I get these right. Just don't want to mess this up. So the choices were: what happened to Dennis J. Lushball? Murdered, followed by a cover up. That is the most popular choice right now by 50%. Number 2 popular choice is walked away from his van and just hasn't been found. And number 3, accidental overdose followed by a cover up. And then 4th, with just a couple people, something else happened to him. All right, so those were the results. Once again, most popular choice is he was murdered followed by a cover up. Now, what all of you may find interesting is that on our think tank on Sunday evening, a large majority of the think tank, me not included, believes that Jay walked away. Something happened, and whether it's due to drugs or something, that he walked away. And then when Alexandria was found, she was also found. Their theory that she was also found, walking away from the van, just in a different direction. And really, even though she admitted to a hotshot, not convinced that her saying that had anything to do with his disappearance. Maybe, but it didn't seem anybody in the think tank believed that it was an outright murder, even though in the discussion group a majority believe that. Now, I will tell you my opinion on it, and once again, I think I was the only person in the group, in the think tank, that thought this way. Is I've convinced myself that Alexandria and Jay that weekend really didn't go camping. I think that they just went to her sister's house. And I think something happened there. It doesn't have to be murder. It could have been an overdose, and whoever else was there covered it up. That's my belief. But I can't really criticize the other opinions out there, because these other opinions, you know what? They fit the facts that we know as well, even though, of course, there aren't many facts. But these other theories that people have, those fit the facts as well. It's just this particular time, I was alone in the think tank in my, with my belief compared to everybody else's. Valerie, did you see any of the photos of the Las Vegas Strip closed and Fremont Street is gated off? Never seen anything like it. I, Valerie, of course, have never seen anything like it either. I did see the pictures. I never thought that I would ever see it. It is stunning. It's amazing. Just a couple days ago, I was talking to a woman who I know in Las Vegas. We worked together for about 4 to 5 years. And we were talking about that. She does not live near the Strip. She doesn't work on the Strip or anything. I don't think she's been down there, but we were talking about that. And it's a weird time. It is a weird time all over the place. All over. Disney World, shut down. All the amusement parks are shut down. People losing their jobs. You never thought there would be a day when Las Vegas would close any of its casinos. And we just don't know when any of this is going to end. Sharia is reminding all of you about all of Unfound's different accounts. Of course, patreon.com. As I stated this past Friday on the episode, given everything that's going on, I'm not going to be pushing Patreon that hard. I will talk about it in the group. I'm going to mention it here. Well, in the episodes themselves, I'm just going to lay off for a little while. I have to, the unemployment rate, I think when everything comes out of this, whenever we're going to get the numbers, it very well may be 30%. And I just think that I want to be very careful in that, even though that I think the Patreon account and what we do there is being used for constructive reasons, between the blogs that I write and access to the Unfound books and being involved in the think tank. I think those are all important things, and I really believe that they help these disappearances. Absolutely. On the other hand, there is a part of me that doesn't want to get too crazy about asking people to contribute to the show when we have 30% unemployment out there and people have lost their jobs, like that, because the government has forced a bunch of businesses to close. And then here I am asking for money. It just feels a little touchy. So I'm just going to dial it back some for now, and then we will see how things shake out. But is ever, all of you have heard, most of you have watched this show before. Where if you want to become a Patreon member, would love to have you. I think we are doing constructive things there. It's not the show, okay? And I've told you, the money that is gotten from that pursuit has allowed me to give shirts and books and things to former guests of the program. And that's going to continue. In fact, we really haven't mentioned about it, but I think very soon now, you're in here, right, Heather? I think one of my assistants, Heather, who already does it for a living, is going to be making the shirts and a lot of the merchandise for Unfound. So then that will become in-house as well. I'm very happy that we could move the website stuff in-house to somebody. And I'm very happy that I think very quickly, very soon, we're going to be able to do the T-shirts in-house as well. And I can't wait for Heather to do that. If you want to remind who Heather is, she made this sign right here, and I love it. That's why it's in a very prominent place in this room, and it's what's on in the background for this show. So we're doing a lot of positive things, and but the Patreon money does go toward that. It will go toward that, and although Heather and I haven't worked it out, I mean, she's not going to be making these T-shirts for free. She'll be making them, and I will be using the Patreon money, to pay her to do it. I think that's eventually how we're going to work this out, Heather, just to not give too much away, but I think that, everybody can figure that out. So, that's so I just want you to know that, Patreon is a legitimate, constructive place where these disappearances can be studied further. On the other hand, I just don't want anybody to think that I am money grubbing at a time when many people have gone to doing well to doing very badly. Michelle says, Ed, you have gathered a fabulous staff. Well, I appreciate that, Michelle, but you should know something. All these people, pretty much approached me first. I love the help. I certainly needed it. And they do a fine job, and I like every one of them. And we talk frequently. We have our own personal little messenger group where we talk about a lot of different things, and I think we all enjoy that. And yes, and as if some of you, although I didn't talk about it that much, that I did this interview with Podomatic.com. They had asked me to fill out this questionnaire, and they turned it into a blog. And as one of the questions, how do you start your own podcast? What advice you would give, and everything. And one of those things is a good way to gauge if you have a good program or not is if you ever get people asking to help with the program because they want to be involved. And that to me is the biggest thing. The reason these people wanted to, they started listening to Unfound. they contacted me or they contacted Cherie, who was already on board. I think the reason they joined is because they wanted to be part of something good. And that, I would say that to any podcaster out there. You want to know if your program is good, do it for a year and see if anybody ever asks you if they can help with the program doing something for you. Because here's the deal. People don't want to be associated with losers. They only want to be associated with winners. And I cannot thank these people who have wanted to help with Unfound. I can't thank them enough. They do a fantastic job. Look at the quality of the discussion in the discussion group, monitored by Carrie and Heather. Look at the quality of the guests. Look at Emily. Look at the quality of the discussion that we have here in YouTube, in this YouTube chat. You can thank, who kicks the trolls out faster than anybody? Cherie. And she's also a, kind of a confidant of mine when it comes to the overall, thinking about what's going on and happening with Unfound. Look at Natasha with YouTube channel, now the website. Now, some of you, Eric's in here tonight, you don't know him as much, but I think that you all be getting to know him a little bit more because we're going to be talking about some things within the next week on some other avenues that we may be pursuing, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. So it's all good. It's absolutely all good. Thank you, Michelle. Paula, Heather has fabulous stuff. She does. She has redesigned the shirts. She's shown me some examples, and they are an improvement over the former ones. Michelle, what has become of the thumb drive in the cases that were on them from Texas? Anything becoming that? Michelle, unfortunately, we've not been able to act on that too much yet because of everything that's going on with the virus. There is a person in particular that needs to go through that thumb drive, and unfortunately, given everything that has gone on here, her job has gotten more complicated. So it's just kind of on the back burner for now. Thank you for asking about that. Sheree says people also want to be associated with people who have their heart in the right place. True. Thank you, Sheree. That's true. Thank you, Michelle, for the kind words. So we have the Lush Ball poll. We have the website. And talked a little bit here about what's going to be going on with the shirts in the future. So we're covering some good topics here. Let's move on to this. Maybe some of you follow Unfound on Twitter. You're saying, what happened to the account? Yeah, that's my fault. Tried to get a little too cute. That's the only way to put it. I was changing the information, updating the information, and I'll tell you exactly what I did. What I wanted to do was because when you sign up for Twitter, one of the things you have to fill out is your date, is your birth date. And I tried to get a little too cute with it. And I put the birth date for Unfound, which would be roughly September 1st, 2016. Well, when I submitted that, they thought that it was somebody who was really, 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 really underage who was trying to get a Twitter account. And that automatically got the account suspended. See, this is why I can't have nice things, people. This is why I can't have nice things. So I filled out the form to get the account reopened, and I had to send in a picture of my ID and all that stuff. I'm very, very embarrassed, but I'm just telling you the truth. That's what happened. And so I'm hoping they will recognize that that it was an honest mistake, because I've never had any Twitter problems before. Account's never been suspended. Any of you who follow me on Twitter know that don't do anything controversial on there. I talk about cases we've covered, and I post about really, really, really recent disappearances. That's what I do. And with one click of the button, I messed it all up. Thank you for all the laughs, people. Thank you. Yes, laughs. Never try to be cute. Yes, thank you, Heather. Cherie says, I'm glad it was you and not one of us. No, I think I would be fairly understanding. I think I would be fairly understanding. So I just did it. I think that when did that happen? It happened this week, and it must be been Saturday. And just stupid, just stupid, stupid. So just gonna have to live with it. But we, as Sharia's already posted on, we have an Instagram account that, of course, I use to post pictures about upcoming cases. I post maps on there if they are relevant to a disappearance. So you might want to follow on Instagram. I'm on there. Or we're on there. The Unfound is on there. And Twitter. What else did you post? And of course, the Facebook page and the group. I think the Facebook page has over 7,500 likes now, and we're getting very, very close to that 7,000 number in the group. Getting very, very close. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen for sure, no doubt about it. Heather says, now, will you be understanding when we do something bad? Well, it's okay. I would, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would put what I did at about a 5. I would say that if I got the discussion group suspended, or I got the page suspended on Unfound, the Unfound page, or if I got what else is there a possibility? I got the entire YouTube channel suspended or something. Then we're getting up into that 8 or 9 out of 10 category as being bad. But Twitter, I use Twitter, but I don't use it as much as the other social media that we have. And so on the scale, that would be a 5. I think Instagram, if I were to get the thing suspended, that might even be like about the same, a 4 or 5 on the bad scale. There's certainly a lot more things that could be done that would be way worse than getting the Twitter account suspended. I think it should come back. I don't think there's any reason it shouldn't come back. But it just takes some time, especially given everything that's going on right now. Cherie says, you were understanding when I accidentally blocked someone in the live show. That Cherie, I'd completely forgotten about it. Heather says, Ed's understanding when I yell at him for adding someone back to the group that I already booted. Yeah. Michelle, Ed, you would be in big trouble. I guess I would be. Angela, what do people do to be booted? You mean in the discussion group, Angela? Trolls. Just people getting in there and, people who go, the only reason they join the group is to, market their own stuff. Those people get booted. The people get in there and start swearing and everything, they get booted. People are certainly allowed to have differences of opinion. There is no groupthink in the discussion group. But when the discussion gets very personal, personal attacks and things like that, people get booted. As Heather said, yes, attacking a guest, boom, out, no questions asked, no warning. Politics, yeah, don't bring up politics in the group either. Don't do that. Don't bring up religion. Don't do it. You want to send thoughts and prayers to somebody, fine. But if you start anything more than that, religion, out. We just don't need it. That's not, you take it somewhere else. It's just not what the group's made for. So there are reasons to get booted, but I wouldn't say we do. I mean, we have almost 7,000 people in there, and I think our boot list is only like 20 something. So I think that most of the time people behave. So yeah, there was the Twitter mistake by yours truly. Let's move on to this, and I'm glad all of you got a nice little laugh about that. But I'm being honest, that's what happened. If you can believe it, tomorrow I was supposed to be speaking at Northwestern State University in Louisiana. Obviously, that's not happening. I'm hoping it's going to get rescheduled for the fall. And then a week from tomorrow, I was supposed to be down at Nova Southeastern University. That's not going to happen either. That I hope also happens in the fall. But you should know within the last couple weeks, I have talked to a representative from Northern Michigan University about speaking to criminal justice majors up there. And then on Monday morning, I spoke to a criminal justice professor from right here in Pinellas County at USF, University of South Florida, the St. Petersburg campus, which is way south of here, down at the tip, down toward the southern end of Pinellas County. I talked to her about speaking to some classes once everything gets back to normal. So this is not everything that's going on here. Kids having to stay home from school, professors remote educating from home and everything. This is not stopping us from trying to still contact people, even though it's probably a lot harder now. But I continue to hope this will all get sorted out by September, so we can start, doing some of these things, branching out and talking to these students about missing persons cases and educating them. Valerie says, "Who would attack a guest?" Wow, that's awful. It's happened. It's happened. As Heather's saying, it's happened. Not recently, to my knowledge, but it's happened. And if you noticed, if you are on the newsletter list, the April 2, 2020 newsletter came out today. Came in at about 4,200 words, which I think is a pretty good length. I hope you got it. If you are on the list, you should have. If you've gotten previous newsletters, you should have gotten this one. And if you didn't, if you don't believe you're on the list, if you're new to the program, contact me personally at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com, and I will get you on the list. Newsletters come out the first of every month. What is in the newsletter? Well, just a little, really I use the newsletter to maybe talk about a few updates in cases, depending. I use it as an opportunity to talk about any recent missing persons news. Maybe, things that are in news. For example, Gannon Stock. That was a bit of a topic in this newsletter, but it was a topic in a previous one. Of course, I've talked about it here. Sheree says, was interesting to read the Gannon Stock section. Thank you, Sheree. Of course, I went kind of in that section. I kind of went off. Once I talked about Gannon, I kind of led into something else, but I thought that those two topics went well together, so I put them under one heading there, Sheree. And the newsletter also gives me an opportunity to get across some of my missing persons theory about how I analyze disappearances and questions that pop up. That's what the newsletter gives me an opportunity to do. And, it also keeps my writing crisp. Of course, I do the 3,000 word blog every week for Patreon. And then once a month, I do the newsletter, which ends up being usually over 4,000 words, and keeps my writing and my typing crisp, because in what I do here, although I do outlines and everything and make, very small scripts for the shows, I don't write a lot otherwise. So doing the blog, doing the newsletter keeps my writing crisp, and I really enjoy doing that. Angela, they carded you. I don't know what that means, Angela, but it sounds funny or something. They carded you. Okay. You mean, Angela, do you mean Twitter? You mean having to send, if that's what you mean, yes. Yes. Once you get suspended like that, they want to know what you're exactly trying to do. So I had to make a copy of my driver's license. I wait, what did I do? Yeah, I made a copy of my driver's license and, took a picture of it and did all this stuff and send it electronically to Twitter. So to let them know it was a mistake. I'm 49 years old. I want to answer, as you probably know, yeah, Twitter mistake, Eric. As you probably know, this Friday we're going to have a Q&A episode. And I want to take an opportunity to answer some of those questions that are going to be on the episode right here tonight as well, since all of you have been so kind to, tune in here. I realize a lot of you probably have a lot more going on now than you did, given all the turmoil going on. So I appreciate you tuning in. So I want to reward you by giving you a little heads up of some of the questions that I'm going to be answering and how I'm going to answer them. There's a question about NamUs. I think this is a fantastic question somebody sent me. Why is it that it is so difficult to why is it seen? Let me put it this way. You would when you go to NamUs, you would think that given that they have this huge database of missing people and they have this huge database of unidentified remains, that it would be fairly simple to match a missing person. Surely there is a missing person in this column that can be matched to the unidentified remains in this column. Then why is it that so many people, so many just average people, like myself, I've tried to do it myself. Why is it that so many people have attempted to do that and fail? Why is that? It would seem it would be fairly straightforward to do this. And I think that's the reason they make the databases available anyway, for people to do this. Why then is it so difficult? Why is it people can work for months and months and years trying to match a missing person with unidentified remains and never have any luck? It's a question I've thought about for a while. I think it's a fascinating question. Why is that? And I've narrowed it down to three main reasons why I think that it's a lot more difficult to do than people perceive it to be. Number one, you have to remember that the NamUs database, when it comes to missing persons, is not even close to complete. I think they're going in the right direction. I admire their desire to make a database. But the fact is, how many people are on NamUs now? 13,000, 14,000, somewhere in there. You have to remember that the popular number that is out there as far as unsolved missing persons cases in the United States is something like 80,000, 90,000, if not 100,000. And NamUs has 15% of that. At the most, 20%. That's one of the reasons. So it's tough to match up unidentified remains with a missing person when 80% of missing persons cases are not even on the database. That is one of the big problems. And the only thing that's going to change that is time and attitude. As we've talked about, as you've heard people on the program say before, they try to get their loved one on NamUs, and you have some local police department that doesn't even know what NamUs is. That's a huge problem. And then there are some departments that know what NamUs is, and they don't want to do anything. So then the people try to do it themselves, and they're not sure what to do. And that's why we here at Unfound at times have tried to give assistance to these people on getting their loved one onto the database. And one that comes to mind that that we were able to help was Missy Phillips getting her husband Dow on the database, and now he's on Charlie Project as well. So that is one reason. That's a very, very big reason, because most missing persons cases are not on NamUs yet. Number two, and I've been told this by a couple people, different people in law enforcement since I started Unfound. The unidentified remains section of NamUs is not as accurate as probably everybody would like. You have to remember that just because there were unidentified remains doesn't mean it was an entire skeleton. It may be just, as we know in Tom Brown's case, it may have only been 30%. It may have just been a few bones. We just don't know. And because of that, it's very difficult to extrapolate how tall the person was, how much the person weighed in particular. We also have to remember something else. Given how the culture has changed in the United States, if this were 70 years ago, when we had very little racial intermixing, meaning white people, black people, African Americans, Caucasians, Asians, there weren't a lot of interracial marriages or interracial couples having children. That, of course, has changed, in the last, I would say, 50 years, 40 years. Because of that, it's very difficult to look at a skeleton and to be able to determine, well, the skeleton doesn't exactly fit in as a Caucasian. It doesn't have the identifying markers of an African American. It doesn't have one of an Asian, because, as you know, these races are built differently. And so when you start intermixing races, it becomes harder and harder to tell what the actual ethnicity of those remains are. So a lot of times people are guessing. Well, you can imagine how tough it would be if you're looking for a missing person who is 25% Latino, 50% African American, and 25% Asian, but somebody entered into the database that the person is 50% Asian, and 50%, Pacific Islander. You can understand how difficult that would be. And a lot of this is very difficult to do. In fact, I had a law enforcement officer who is a very close, confidant of this program. She told me that, don't be surprised if they put people in there who are white, who are, when actuality they are black. She goes, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. So that's number two reason. It's very difficult to match people. Now, I'm not saying that these people are shoddy at their work, but what I'm saying is the work in entering the information, everything, it's not as straightforward as everybody believes. Number three, the other reason I think that it's hard to match up missing persons in the database with unidentified remains is because I'm fairly convinced that a lot of these unidentified remains are of people who are not American citizens. You have to remember, in the NamUs database, 99% of the people are Americans. Well, you can't look at a skeleton or some bones and say, oh yeah, that's an American. Who knows? And because we know, and I'm not here to get into politics, this is just facts. We know that people have come to this country through means that we would say are outside the law. We know that there are people who have come here on work visas. The visas run out and they never go back to their home country and they disappear into the United States. We know there are people who come here on vacation, never go home, on and on and on and on and on. Well, at some point, some of these people are going to go missing too. And there's no documentation of them. They're in it being that they're in these categories. Those people in those categories, I think it's less likely that anybody's going to go to the police and file a missing persons report. So that's an issue as well, that I'm convinced there are a fair amount of these unidentified remains where the person who, whose these remains are is not from the United States. I think those are the three main reasons. Once again, I don't have a lot of facts to back that up. I have anecdotal evidence, but that's, I think, the reason. And anybody that's ever tried to do that and has failed at it, don't feel too bad. It's much more difficult to do than people realize, I think, for the reasons that I just stated. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Angela. Indy, Ed, you had a couple of guests. You had a couple of guests lined up. There were 2 no-shows when it came time for the interviews. Did they ever contact you again? No. No. I'm not saying, we would, of course, I just want you to know, nobody's ever banned, no guest is ever banned from the show. If they say that they're going to do an interview and then it doesn't happen, they flake or whatever the case may be, they don't automatically get banned. Now, I will tell you, within the last, let's just say 4 months, there was the mother of a missing woman who said she was going to do an interview last year and flaked. And then she got back in contact with us again and said she was ready this time. She's ready. When it came to do the interview, she flaked again. Now that will get you, I don't know what's going on there. I have no idea. But yes, we've had people who flaked on interviews and they're not banned from the show. I don't block them or anything, but it's not like we're going out of our way to get back in contact with them either. And that's just not to be mean, but there are just too many people who are eager to be on the program. And the more time we spend trying to chase these people who have flaked down, that just takes time from people who are ready and eager to be on the program and are going to be ready and on time. There are only so many hours in a day. Sure, discrepancies with what the family is looking for as opposed to what the individual remains actually show. Examples, dental work, pregnancies, etc. Ran into this with Amanda Fravel, right? Sure, you certainly know about that. Valerie, why does everyone choose to call and email during Unfound Live? Now I'm a 7-minute delay. Well, so Valerie, why are you on a 7-minute delay? You should be pretty close live. Hello, Zebra. You should be able to hit the live button, which is somewhere down, in this section right here of a live show, and it automatically should take you. It shouldn't be on a 7-minute delay, Valerie, unless you have really weird, bad service. I think even people, if they're watching in Australia or Europe, get it almost instantaneously. Instantly, whatever. So I would check that, Valerie. Thank you, Zebra. Marcus, it's really difficult, I imagine, to utilize information sharing system such a NamUs to fullest without the requisite information. Well, I think what I'm saying, Marcus, is that everybody goes to NamUs thinking all the information is correct and complete. It's not. That is not, I'm not picking on them. All right. They're doing a fine job. I'm sure they're doing the best they can with what they have. But it would be wrong to think that the database is 100% correct and all the information is in there that everybody needs. Not true. Hello, Derek. You don't have to apologize. Are you still taking questions in the discussion group for this Friday show? Karen, go ahead. You want to send me some questions through the discussion group? Go ahead. I will see what I can do. It is, Eric, it is certainly a work in progress project. NamUs, absolutely true. So I just wanted to talk about that regarding NamUs. I think that, and you will hear me answer that question again in the recording or on Friday's episode. I had gotten a question about Stephen Kocher. You should know that the guy who I consider to be an expert in the disappearance, he's kind of vanished from Facebook. Luckily, I still have his phone number, and I texted him today, but he did text me back, but we did not get a chance to talk about Stephen. I have no new information, any updates on his case at all. I just don't. Just don't. Another another question that I'm going to answer on Friday's Q&A is, why did it take 3.5 years for us to cover our first Alzheimer case? That would be David. That would be David Hardy Jr. Being that it seems like on a weekly basis I read at least one disappearance about an older person with Alzheimer's or dementia wandering off and going missing. Why did it take this long? Well, I've had a chance to think about that. And I think the reason is because most of these Alzheimer's cases don't get to be a year old. It seems to me a vast majority of them are solved within that time, if not quicker, if not within a week, if not within a couple weeks. Now, why is that? Why is that seem people who don't have these ailments, they go missing, for long periods of time, year, 5 years, 10 years, but Alzheimer's patients, not as much. Well, I think you have to think about what it means if somebody has Alzheimer's. Is they're usually, of course, it wasn't the situation in David's case, and I'll get into that in a second, but we know with Alzheimer's people, they're usually being cared for by somebody. They usually are not driving a car anymore. They're not allowed to go out on their own. And it seems to me that these situations where Alzheimer's patients or sufferers, dementia sufferers go missing, it's because they've wandered away. They were at some facility or at their house. A nurse or a child or a spouse is caring for them, and the person looks the other way, and the Alzheimer's sufferer is out the door. Well, you can understand in those situations where those people, they're probably going to be a lot easier to find. First of all, people are going to realize very quickly that the person is missing, very quickly, within a few minutes. Second of all, if they can only walk, and most Alzheimer's sufferers and dementia sufferers, 70s and 80s, how far can they really walk in a very limited amount of time? Not very far. Thirdly, if they're in some sort of facility, usually these facilities are around other buildings, maybe other even care facilities. I can think of one I'm thinking of is down on Bryan Dairy Road. There's like a Walgreens next to it. It's in a lot of these facilities are in city situations. They're not out in the middle of the nowhere where it's forest everywhere. So all these things considered, if you consider all these things, it's easy to understand why Alzheimer's patients, if they do wander off, they are found fairly quickly. Somebody files a missing persons report, but these people are found. Sometimes they're deceased, and that sucks. Oftentimes they're found alive, and they are brought back to the facility, and a lot of times the reason they wandered off is because somebody just was looking the wrong way at the wrong time. Then why is it how did then David Hardy Jr. end up on Unfound if that's the situation? Well, I think you have to look at David's situation. He was not living his life like an Alzheimer's patient. They were, I would say, allowing him to drive his own car, go where he wanted, was going to work. And even though he started to have problems getting lost and then have to go and get him, bring him home, they were still allowing him to go out. In fact, the day before he went missing for good, he had gone missing. So he was not living the life of an Alzheimer's patient. He was living the life of a person who didn't have Alzheimer's, but he did have Alzheimer's. And I think that's what eventually led to his disappearance. That's why his disappearance is still unsolved after, not quite 3 years. So he wasn't your typical Alzheimer's patient. Thus, even though he has Alzheimer's, we can't look at his disappearance in that way. And so because we have the stipulation that a disappearance has to be a year old before it can be covered on Unfound, most Alzheimer's disappearances don't get to be a year old because they get solved well before that. I think that's the reason. I'm pretty sure. I think that makes some good logical sense. I don't have a lot of stats to back it up, but I think that's the reason, because I have to tell you, it's been bothering me. It's been bothering me since even before we did David Hardy's episode. When I first started talking to his daughter, really started thinking, why is this the first Alzheimer's case we've covered? I think I now have the answer, and I think that's what it is. Cherie says, I think that's right. Most get resolved quickly. I think so. Cherie, Carrie, I know a lady in Washington State with dementia that slipped out. She's been missing almost 2 years. Yeah. Carrie, no doubt there are exceptions. No doubt. Zebra, have you ever covered Mara Murray? I would love to interview her. Bother. Zebra, I've never covered that disappearance, and I don't know if I ever will, for reasons that I've talked about in the past. That is kind of a briar patch. It just is. Carrie, sadly, the family was set to have her put in a facility, but they had to wait for the bed to be ready. Okay, Carrie. Michelle, I know of a case from Henderson, Texas, and has been missing for around 10 years. Would be nice to put you with her family. Let's do it. Let's get it done, Michelle. That's, you know Emily well enough. You can make that happen. Let's do it. One more thing before we've gone about an hour. I want to talk about, and Cherie wanted me to add this in the Q&A for Friday, and I did so, and Cherie, you'll know that it's the final question I answer for the episode. And what is the future of Unfound? This is the way I see things. Eventually, I want Unfound to be a thought leader. What does that mean? I want to get the program to a point where we are changing people's attitudes toward missing persons cases. And so how are we going to do that? We're already, of course, doing a lot. We do the episodes on Fridays. We do this live show. We do the think tank. We do the Unfound podcast channel. You should know that very, very few podcasts out there turn their audio episodes into video episodes. Very, very, very few. We're one of the few. That's one, other thing that we're doing. Of course, the books. No other podcast out there puts out books about their cases that they've covered. Nobody else does it. Then what's the next step? The next thing we are doing is, of course, me going to these colleges. Once everything gets back to normal, I'll start to speak to college students, future investigators, future sheriffs, future deputies, future FBI agents, future Secret Service agents, future mayors of towns about missing persons cases and what they need to learn about them, all the problems that we have here in the 21st century, and how some of these things can be changed. Okay, that's one way you become a thought leader. By getting to these people when they're young, they want to be in law enforcement, get to them before what I would say they become jaded. And before they start learning the wrong things about missing persons cases once they get into a law enforcement position. You get to them and leave an impression on them in their formative years in college. That's what I'm trying to do by going to campuses. As I've talked about for a while, to me, it's all about education. The episodes are about education. This show is about education. The think tank is about education. Everything we do is about educating the public. And so to take that further, now we get into a position where we educate those people who will eventually have control of these cases. It will be their responsibility. Get them in the right frame of mind. That's a goal. That's how you become a thought leader. And then what's after that? What's after that is I want Unfound to be the place, for example, um, we know every once in a while there is a disappearance that happens that gets national news or international news, like Madeline McCann from several years ago. And we know of other disappearances that at the time they happened, for some reason, everybody's covered. Local news, national news, international news, 24/7 news, everything. And once in a while, now that I do have a TV, I will catch something on this, or I will see something, and I will watch these commentators who may be ex law enforcement people, but you can tell they don't know anything about missing persons cases. I think they're perfectly fine people. I'm sure they had excellent careers. I'm sure they helped their communities as well as anybody could. But when it comes to missing persons cases, you can tell they're kind of fumbling around. Why? Because even though we know what the number is, it's 80,000, 90,000, maybe 100,000 unsolved missing persons cases in the United States. We know, even though that is the situation, that still law enforcement officers can start their career in their mid-20s. Of course, they're a state patrol. Some state, patrol officers can get retirement after 20 years, 25 years. Of course, maybe local, and never come across a missing persons case that lasts longer than a week. Remember, most missing persons cases, missing persons reports are resolved very quickly. The ones we talk about on Unfound are the exceptions, the ones that last a year, 5 years, 10 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. Those are the exceptions to the rule regarding missing persons cases. The problem is that these people that get on there and are talking heads on these news shows, they may know about law enforcement. But because they've never experienced a disappearance case that is truly puzzling, they don't know how to talk about it. And so what I'm saying is I want Unfound to displace those people. I want to get to a point where something happens and it's big news, some missing persons case. I want those news channels to call us, to contact us instead of contacting those people. Then if it's me, I get on there, then I can give an truly educated, truly experienced insight into what's going on, in contrast to these people that the only reason they're on there is because they have law enforcement experience. Well, in those situations, you don't need people with law enforcement experience. You need people with missing persons experience, which is different. And so that is the ultimate goal, because then when you get to that point, you're not talking about talking to tens of thousands of people like the downloads we get at Unfound every week. Then you have access to millions of people. Millions. And then that's really, really, really how you can become a thought leader and change people's minds about these things and truly educate them about what really has gone on, what's wrong with it, and how it needs to change. So that is the future goal of Unfound. That's the goal. Derek, would you ever come to high schools to speak about missing persons cases? Well, generally I would have nothing against that, Derek, but you have to realize that like I said, I want to do it for education purposes. Unlike other podcast hosts who I know go on national tours, they go to meetups and it's a show. Well, let's get together and let's talk about this disappearance and how interesting it is and it. That's not what I do. That's not uh that's we are in the education business. We are in the informing business, in the information business. Um um I don't want to get together with people just to throw down a few beers. So, and this is something that I'm having these discussions with colleges right now. I think I'm surprising them a little bit when I tell them that, yeah, I'm interested. I want to go into the classrooms and talk to these students for an hour. I'm not sure how much they get of that. Instead, I think they more get, yeah, I want to come and speak to the whole campus, and we're going to do this, and it's going to be great, and there's going to be music, and it's not what I do. So, it would just depend, Derek. That's why, the concentration for me has been criminal justice majors. Um, in contrast to speaking to a group at a college where it's, teachers and accountants and everything else. I guess it's great to, have public access like that, but I don't believe that's the best way to, hold an education seminar. Um, I just, don't know about that. Zebra says, you totally motivate me. You do much. Is this your full-time job? I wish I was productive and talented. This is my full-time job, Zebra. And the reason Unfound is so productive is because we have so many people now. Christine, that is why I like Unfound so much, is getting unknown missing people out there. You don't cover popular for high ratings. Christine, I don't give a dang about ratings. I don't read reviews. In fact, Natasha, it must have been last week or something, sent me like an email with a bunch of reviews from somewhere, and there was other things in it. And I said, that other stuff you sent in the email is great. And I told her, don't ever send me any reviews again. I don't care. Don't care. Eric, the problem is tunnel vision. See the case of Richard Jewell, not a missing persons case, but a relevant comparison. Well, no doubt that was they rushed to judgment on that very quickly, Eric, and made his life a living hell for sure. Zebra, so that means you would be more like a missing persons organization? I think what I'm saying, Zebra, is that we want to cover all the bases here. As I've stated many times, I think podcasting is an excellent platform. The problem is that there are still bunches and millions and millions and millions of people who don't ever listen to podcasts at all. Oh, and never will. And granted, it may be because of their age. Anybody maybe, and I'm not here to discriminate or anything, but maybe anybody 60 years old and above, you start talking about podcasts, and they start like, what's that? But there's still many people under 60, under 50, under 40, who just don't do that. And so that's why it's always been my belief to, move out, diversify, if you want to call it a company, any company diversifies, Disney, movies, cartoons, entertainment, clothing, etc. Be everywhere. Why won't Unfound be everywhere that is relevant to missing persons cases and disappearances? Zero, maybe you could find a common theme amongst the missing and worm college students about potential dangers. Maybe, Zebra. Seek out journalism. Eric, I'm fully prepared to talk to communication and journalism students as well. That has certainly been a discussion with some of these college people. Yes. That's been a discussion, and I've told them that I feel that I am experienced enough to talk about three major topics: missing persons cases, talking, and then one. Number two, talking to psychology majors about dealing with people who have suffered trauma. Of course, with all the discussions that I've had with these families, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, and their missing loved ones, I have a lot of experience in that area. And then thirdly would be media people, journalism, and interviewing people, maybe getting them to say more than they really want to, uh, and how to make a good podcast. One that's truly pointed in the direction of professional media, in contrast to one that's just put on as a show. Yeah, I'm fully prepared. I think that I could speak in depth in any of those areas. Paula, Unfound does a great job with dealing with mental health issues, addictions, and other issues. I think that really helps people look at missing people differently. You to put a face to all of them. We make no judgments here, Paula. Although I will say, I've never done any drugs in my life. I don't even drink, never smoked marijuana, nothing. And I've made it a life's goal to stay away from alcoholics and people who do drugs and everything about that. But when it comes to covering missing persons cases, that those things are not a consideration. As I've often said, even when it's been some of the drug dealers who have disappeared that we've talked about, Donnie Smatlack, Jeff Joseph. I don't care what they were doing. Now, I will say that had they, if both Donnie and Jeff end up being alive, I hope they get prosecuted to the fullest extent of law for doing things that are illegal. Same way with Cameron Remmer. He was doing things that were illegal. And if had he been caught, I would have said that he should have been prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But that's not a concern. It's not a concern. Just because I cover the case doesn't mean I'm throwing out the rule of law. I'm not. People want to find these people. That's what we do. But never let because I show consideration to these people and sympathy and everything, never think that changes my mind that I know these people were breaking the law. Anything else? Okay, I have to talk about this before we go because I just have to. This show, Tiger King. I'm going to spend a few minutes on it. I'll have you know that I have Netflix. I'm not going to watch the program. I'm not going to watch it. But Paula says, I can't wait to hear this. That I have, once again, I've read about it. I want you to know that I went and read the idea behind it. I know about Don Lewis being missing, 81-year-old, and this is right here in Tampa. I mean, it's right across the bay from where I am is where this all happened, and I think I've driven by where Don Lewis's car was eventually found, this airport or wherever it was. I think I've been by there, and Carol Baskin and all of this stuff. You have to keep in mind something. Nobody on that show is getting paid to be boring. And, I take a very strict attitude toward these things. I'm, maybe in some circles out there, people would call me a square or a fuddy-duddy or something like that. But the truth is this. If this Joe Exotic guy had a regular haircut and all of these people weren't so weird and the disappearance was the same, everything else was the same, but these people were more like average people, it wouldn't get covered at all. Wouldn't get covered at all. And you have to remember that. And it, I guess people were watching it. It got the #1 rating on Netflix and everything else, but for all the wrong reasons. And no matter how popular this show would be, it's centered around a disappearance, which may be a murder. Who knows? Who knows? I would never be in. I would never be. It even upsets me that I live so close to where this all happened. I would never be caught dead anywhere near any of this. As far as the investigation of it or anything else. Um, it's just it's kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do here. It's great entertainment, but um, like I said, if it wasn't for these crazy characters, none of these people working on this program would give a damn about any of it. Wouldn't give a damn about Carol Baskin, wouldn't give a damn about Donald Lewis, whether he was murdered or missing or whatever else. Nobody would give a damn. The only reason they're there is because they got some funny characters that are willing to go on camera. And in that way, it's no different than any reality show out there. It's no different than I see, because I've had the TV on this Baby June show. It's no different than that. And they all sound like all horrible people. And what else is there to say on it? Angela says craziest group of players. Carrie, it is too much hype, so I haven't watched it. Cherie says no matter what anyone thinks or feels, Carol Baskin's husband is still missing. True. Zebra, have you ever been nervous to be recognized in public? Yeah, I'll get back to that, Zebra. Yes, Angela, it's sensationalized. Why is it that they have to bring in all these other things? If you want to cover Don Lewis's disappearance, just do it. Just do it. That's the real story. But the people that work on these TV shows like this, it's just a gig to them. It's just a gig. It's just something that's going to pay the bills for the next so many months, and then they'll go off something else and won't care about the subject matter or anything else. All they'll care about is that it gets done. Um, in my opinion, if you're going to cover this disappearance, then just do it the right way. And what the producers of this program don't understand is, they're looking, oh, look, we got these #1 ratings, and that, what would get higher ratings? If you actually did an in-depth investigative journalism piece on the disappearance and actually solved it, that would do more for your credibility and your career than having a show on Netflix that everybody's going to forget about 6 months from now. You solve this disappearance, you change people's lives. Instead, you're doing this series, and people, a year from now, everybody like, who the hell's Joe Exotic? Just to be like that, gone. In contrast, you could have used your cameras, your money, the investment, the company to actually change some people's lives and try to figure out what happened to Don Lewis. That's the way I look at it. It's just the way I look at it. And so, somebody asked me about Maura Murray. It's kind of the same thing. All of the people who have tried to cover that, they just that disappearance, they just can't help going down into the mud, picking a side, doing sensationalism and everything else. They just cannot help themselves. So it's no wonder that Maura Murray, despite all of the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours that people, it's still unsolved. And so this Netflix show will come, it will go, and everybody will still be wondering what happened to Don Lewis. You could even say that about Tara Grinstead. I appreciate the work Payne Lindsay did on that. The fact is, though, her remains have still not been found. And it seems like everybody's doing a victory lap. Still not solved, not in my mind. So, I don't know. Since as usual, making the bad guys look good and make them stars. Yep, making all the wrong people stars. This is exactly what we're doing. That's exactly what reality TV is, Michelle, and it's been that way for 20 years. Well before I started this program, I've been railing on reality TV for a long, 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 long time. Okay, the only thing it does is brings attention to this case, but it is the right attention. I'm not sure. Here's what I know, Carrie. When people are done watching this entire series or whatever it is, they're going to remember Carol Baskin's name and Joe Exotic's name more than they're going to remember Donald Lewis's name, whereas he's the one that's missing. Thank you, Indy. Paul, the disappearance, the way they portray disappearance is just a side note to the rest of the carnival. Right. No one's going to forget this show ever. Well, I'm not sure about that, Heather. BA, Unfound interviews are great, but the notion that these podcasts solve cases is largely fiction. As I've said, I'm not hesitant to say that I wish our closure rate was higher. However, what I will say is that we've moved about a third of the cases higher forward. And and many of the guests will tell you, after being on Unfound, we were able to give them some new ideas to think about and some new avenues, etc. So I'm very honest about that. I wish and I make no bones about it. I don't lie to any of the guests. I tell them the stats on the program. I tell them what we're going to do, and that's what we do. But what you're, but yeah, I'm not offended. I'm not offended at all. I think that I've been. Here's what I know I don't do. You don't see me doing any victory laps on any of these cases. I'm willing even to admit Crystal Morrison, Zoe Campus's, Tom Brown's. I don't know how much effect Unfound had, except to put these, on the map a little bit more. But some guests will tell you that the program has greatly, greatly, greatly helped. Joyce Rivatuzo, she'll tell you that. Everybody had forgotten about her daughters until Unfound came along. And then one of the listeners got involved and took it from there. So I'm not offended. I don't want you to think, BA, I'm offended. We're always looking to do a better job. But you will never see me doing a victory lap for cases. You'll never see me doing any victory laps, period. And I'm always going to be truthful about the results of the program. Heather says this case was reopened because of the so that's a plus. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see, Heather. Paula, I hope I can get the image of Joe out of my head soon. That's funny, Paula. Sheree, I think I understand what she's saying. BA, you don't have to apologize. Eric, we don't advertise. We solve cases in this. Yep. BA, once again, not offended. Not offended. We're just going to try to do the best work that we can. And if there's ever a time where I think that Unfound absolutely caused a disappearance to be solved, I will tell you. And if some of these continue to get solved by one way or the other, I will gauge how much of effect we had on that or not. I think, at least when it comes to Hemphill County, Texas, those people will tell you we had a great effect on the situation there. And some people will say, had it not been Unfound, Sheriff Lewis would still be sheriff. And a lot of these things would never have happened. So, and the main reason being is that until that point that we came out, in like April of 2018, pretty much everybody was afraid to talk badly about him. The Canadian Record wasn't going to do it. So just that, the way I look at it, once Unfound covered Tom Brown's disappearance, Sheriff Lewis could never get out in the front of it ever again. It seems like he was always reacting to things, and I think that's what eventually led to his demise. Paula says, that's why the whole think tank was great. I love that Ed takes questions and comments back to the guests. I think most of the listeners know that when they contact me privately, I get back to them fairly quickly. I try to do that. Thank you, BA. Carrie says, Unfound wants families to get whatever closure they can get, even if Unfound is never publicly mentioned. The team doesn't care about making a name, just results. That's right. And I should say one of the other things that we offer that I don't think any other true crime podcast out there does is that I continue to talk to these guests after they've been on the program. Not all of them. It's all up to them. But they know that they can call me anytime. And everything we talk about continues to be private. We'll brainstorm, give them opinions. If some private investigator contacts them, what do I think? And we do that all for free. And even, because a lot of these families don't know who to trust. They've, so many scam artists and shysters and psychics and everything that come a calling saying they can do this and saying do that. It's sometimes for a lot of these families and guests, it's just nice that they can find some people that they can trust. That people who actually, kind of know what they're doing. The cops may know what they're doing, but they're impossible to reach. Their friends and other family members want to help, but they have no experience in the area. So it's nice to find somebody that they can trust, who actually has experience and can talk knowledgeably about what's going on. And that's something that, to my knowledge, nobody else is offering. Nobody. So, but BA, I don't want you to think I'm offended by your statement. We're just continue to be working hard. We're just going to continue. We're going to continue to tell the truth. We're just going to continue to work hard. And, because I believe that's how life works. But the whole Tiger King thing, Heather, you may be right that they're going to reopen it. I will tell you this. I just read like the Charlie Project bio on it. She's saying that, if we really want to just look at this from a disappearance point of view and forget all the other stuff, I can easily do that. It's possible that he was murdered by her or somebody. The question I would have is, Donald had all these planes allegedly. Were any of them missing? I know his car was found at this little airport. Were any of his planes missing? Did anybody file a flight plan who was going to be taken out of the, because usually you have to do that before you take off. Did they file a flight plan? Anybody take off? Is that answered in the show? I don't even know. He was an old guy. It seems like, about Costa Rica and all that. And he was going down there for sex trips. I just don't know. Sheree, don't be like that. Come on, Sheree. I just don't know. I think that there's a huge amount of different possibilities in this, and and everybody pointing the fingers. It's anything's possible. So just don't know. You know, it would seem to me if this was set up as a murder, it seems somebody wanted to make it look like Donald took off in a plane and never came back. That's what it looks like. But, did Donald really have Alzheimer's? He wasn't a young guy anymore. Did he really have Alzheimer's? Or is she just saying that? These are all questions that I have that I'm not sure the show is going to answer. So that's my opinion. That's all that I got for you tonight. Man, went long. Didn't really come here with a very long list, but we managed to make an hour and a half out of it. Okay, Friday Q&A episode. It's going to be about 3 hours long. I answer over 30 questions that I've either gotten on this program or recently or somewhere in between. And I think it'll be fairly insightful. A lot of new questions that I answered, so I don't want you to think that this is going to be a copy of last year's Q&A episode, and I recorded it today, and I think it went really well. So that's all I have. I'm going to get out of here. My voice, between almost 3 hours of talking about answers to questions and this, my voice is probably going to be shot. It feels okay right now, though. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight, and you'll hear me on Friday. No interview this Friday. It'll just be me talking. Sorry. You just can't get my voice on Friday. I hope you can stand it. Good night, everyone. See ya.